Welcome into the PFF podcast. Steve Palazzolo back here with Sam Monson. And Sam, we are not together at the moment. Full disclosure. It's sad.
Separated by the holiday season. We're not in the podcast closet. We are on remote location from two different locations.
On a special secret holiday assignment over here. So we apologize in advance if the audio is a little bit different than normal. But we got to kick it off by saying, I have to ask you, Sam, how was your first... I assume this was your first Thanksgiving, but I know you've been back and forth in America through the years.
First time I've experienced Thanksgiving in America, but as we said last week, my wife and daughter were in Ireland, and I was grading the game. So it was kind of fun, though. It was a whole day of football. I watched the first couple of games. I wasn't doing analysis in those, and then I got to experience the wondrous beauty that was the New York Giants offense against the Washington Redskins defense in the late game.
What'd you grade, about 15 plays in the second half?
It wasn't a huge amount, I'll admit. But what there was depressing enough that it made up for the lack of volume. And really, that was the perfect way to go to bed, put you in the mood for sleeping.
Beautiful. Beautiful way to finish the day. I have to ask, though, food-wise, did you do anything special? Did you partake in any of the Thanksgiving goodies?
No, I didn't. I had just regular food that happened to be in the fridge because I didn't want to leave the house and try and brave craziness.
Wow. You didn't have the greatest Thanksgiving, I think, compared to the rest of America. It's okay, though. It's okay. You seem to enjoy it.
It did the job.
It did the job. All right. Well, hopefully next year we'll continue to just progress and get better and get you into the Thanksgiving spirit. But we have a ton of games to preview, so let's get into it. We have 3 games in the bag. They were spectacular. Sunday's slate. Let's start with Buffalo Bills traveling to the Kansas City Chiefs. On paper, this is not looking as pretty as it was a couple weeks ago when Buffalo looked like that sleeper playoff contender, and now they've kind of regressed back into the Bills that we expected coming into the season. And though the Chiefs also went from a team that was tickling the top of the NFL, if you will, Sam.
Stop that right now.
One of the top teams in the NFL, but struggling these last few weeks. What do you make of the paths that these two teams are on, both taking a step back in recent weeks?
Yeah, well, Buffalo at least have gone back to Tyrod Taylor for this game. So apparently they've finally evaluated the tape on Nathan Peterman and decided that, what we saw was actually pretty much the size of it and he shouldn't be starting again. So Tyrod Taylor will at least be the Bills quarterback. I think the big thing is, what are the Chiefs? I think we know the Bills were probably flying a little too high earlier in the season, especially once they got rid of Marcel Darius in the middle of that defense. The run defense has completely fallen to pieces. So I think it makes sense for them to have taken step backs. The Chiefs, though, I think on paper are still a good quality AFC outfit that should be winning that division comfortably, and just have been losing these games. Part of it is Alex Smith going back a little bit to the old Alex Smith. Not so much in, I think, becoming less aggressive, but just being less good. I think he's just had some
just
bad
hasn't
games.
Been good.
He started the season and it was a twofold thing. One, he was this new aggressive quarterback, but 2, he was hitting pretty much everything he attempted. I mean, that was the big thing. It wasn't just that he'd become a more aggressive quarterback, he'd become a better one. And I think he's still more aggressive than he's been in the past, but he's no longer a better quarterback than he's been in the past, and that's been a problem. So I keep waiting for the Chiefs to get their season back on track. Maybe this is the game to let them do it.
Yeah, and I think this is the game they get the running game back on track as well. If you look at that Buffalo defensive front, the last 2 weeks absolutely demoralized, especially that Saints game 2 weeks ago. The offensive line from the Saints just had their way with the Buffalo defensive line. And, Kareem Hunt, after that spectacular start, has not had 100 yards on the ground since week 5, has not scored a rushing touchdown since week 3. He has still contributed in the pass game, but this does feel like the game where Kareem Hunt can get back on track, at least statistically, in the run game, when you have guys like Cedric Thornton, who we've talked about before, playing nose tackle and just seemingly overmatched at the point of attack. So I'd expect Kansas City this should be the game that they get their offense back on track. And they have some games coming up in the next few weeks where the offense should be able to get back to where they were earlier in the season. So I'm with you. I do think that they will take shape as the best team in the AFC West, but not trending the right way here. What gives Buffalo a chance to pull the upset? Is it just, Tyrod being back at the helm and at least being able to keep them close? What do they have to do to keep this close and giving them a chance to beat Kansas City?
Yeah, I mean, that clearly gives them their best chance to win in terms of a quarterback option. What they need is that defense to figure out the run game. With losing Darius, they've had guys like Cedric Thornton in the middle, and it just has not worked. They need something to shore up the middle of that run defense and just stop teams gashing them constantly, because what we said before, even as the chairman of the Tyrod Taylor fan club, Tyler's not the kind of quarterback that's going to win you a shootout. He needs to be a game manager plus, and in order to be a game manager plus, you need to keep him in the game in terms of not letting an opposing offense just run the ball relentlessly down your throat. You can't win games like that.
Yeah, so looking for that Buffalo defense to get back to where they were earlier in the season, but I think we're creep back toward average Buffalo, because it's been a disaster the last couple of weeks. I think we both have Kansas City in this game. Is that correct?
Yep.
All right, both taking the Chiefs and continuing to further their lead in the AFC West. Let's move to another AFC East team, the New York Jets, and they're hosting the Carolina Panthers. The Jets have also kind of regressed into what we thought they would be coming into the season after, playing above their heads for the first few weeks of the year. And they did beat Buffalo a couple weeks ago, but had an ugly loss to the Tampa Bay Bucks last time we saw them in Week 10. What are we seeing from this matchup, Jets and Panthers? What gives the Jets some semblance of hope in this game, even at home?
Yeah, just scanning through our picks right now, we only actually differ on one game, you and I, and this is not it. Both of us.
It feels like a lopsided week, right? At least on paper.
Yeah, I mean, I picked Dallas was the one game, or two. I got two. We both got the Detroit game wrong. I think whatever reason, we both picked Detroit, possibly expecting the Case Keenum bandwagon to collapse. It still has.
Every week. I bet against it every week. It's not happening.
It's happening at some point. We all know it. We're just waiting for that moment. And then I picked Dallas. I thought they might have had a chance of getting that season back on track. No.
You had a rough day.
Yeah, no, so that was bad. I did at least get Washington right. But that was where we differed yesterday, and then we're only one different on the Sunday slate. This Jets team is starting to look a little bit more like we thought they were early in the season. I think they're still a decent side, though, compared with everyone. Everyone thought the Jets would be vying for the number one overall pick. They're not. They're an actual half-decent unit. Josh McCown continues to actually play. I mean, this may be, if you take out the quarterback whisperer half season, 2013 in Chicago, that basically extended his career by another 5 years. If you remove that from the equation, you could make the argument that this is a career year for Josh McCown, which is kind of depressing when you consider that he's still average. But
he's always been a guy that can make plays. It's just a matter of how much of the disastrous plays, how many of the disastrous plays do you avoid? And he's done a little bit better job of that this year. Yeah. We're saying nice things about Josh McCown.
I mean, I think it is something that he has become an average quarterback this year, which is, it's no small achievement. There's a lot of teams out there that are desperately searching for quarterbacks and it can just be average. So
Absolutely.
It's a big thing that Josh McCown has been playing average football this year, because it's not what we expected from them, especially given the receiving core he has to work with there and the offensive line he has to work with there, neither of which are really helping him out. So I think this Jets team is a better unit than we thought at the start of the season, but they're still not that good. And they're going to go up against a team like Carolina, who they won't be able to just dominate on the ground like they were with the Bills. They're going to have a tougher time of getting what they want to do done against this team. And I think that's probably all there is to it. They're just not going to be able to score enough points against this Carolina offense or defense to stay in this game that long.
Yeah, and Josh McCown, fourth in the league in adjusted completion percentage. It's been a safe, conservative pass game, but fourth in the league as far as just throwing the ball on target to his receivers. That is something. And I do believe that's why the Jets have been in so many games and did sneak a few wins, right? It's just this, keep them in the game type of approach. The thing I'm looking forward to seeing for Carolina, though, Greg Olsen back practicing, most likely getting back on the field on Sunday, and now seeing how this offense evolves. It feels like the Carolina offensive evolution is a weekly discussion point for us, but now with Olsen on the field and McCaffrey on the field and Jonathan Stewart and Devin Funchess, how do they How do they incorporate all of these guys? And if Olsen does get back to that reliable target, they love to just isolate him and run the deep out and take advantage of mismatches with him on safeties and linebackers. If that just becomes another high percentage outlet for Cam Newton, the same way McCaffrey's become a bit of a high percentage throw, at least, even if it's not always a productive play, Carolina's offense is starting to become a little bit more difficult to defend, and it makes them even more dangerous down the stretch.
Yeah, I mean, Greg Olsen is their number one receiver. It's just unusual for that to be a tight end, but he is legitimately their number one star wide receiver, or star wide receiver. So if he isn't there, which he hasn't been for this year so far, it's a huge loss. So I think it's very difficult to overstate how important that is to get this guy back. It could transform this offense down the stretch.
Yeah, I'm with you there. We're both taking Carolina,
yep.
I believe. All right. Yeah, so we're both taking the Panthers. We're not expecting a ton of major upsets this weekend.
I think you can just default that we're both taking the same team until we get to our one difference.
It's more conversational if I ask you, even though I know the answer. Yeah. I'm trying to come across as conversational, Sam, for our listeners.
I see.
Okay, so just let me be.
All right.
Chicago at Philadelphia, Sam, we're both taking the Eagles. Any reason for hope for the Bears? The Eagles are absolutely rolling. Wentz is playing well at QB, one of the best offensive lines, one of the best defensive lines. Any reason to believe in the Bears traveling to Philly?
Not a huge one, no. This Chicago defense is good. It's just lost Leonard Floyd, which is a problem, or at least doesn't help the weakest area of this defense. They're going to go up against an offense that's rolling and really doing a good job of scheming things. They're helping out Carson Wentz with run-pass options. They're running the ball well. They have arguably the best offensive line in the NFL. They've got a quarterback playing well. They're phenomenal on third down. So, Chicago's strength is their defense, and they're going to run into one of the best offenses they faced. And then the other side of the ball, they themselves are going to run into this buzzsaw that is the Philadelphia Eagles defense, which is only getting better with guys like Ronald Darby coming back. I just don't see how they could possibly win this game.
I'll give you the one glimmer of hope. It was nice to see the offensive line from the Bears looking a lot more like we expected them to be for much of the season last week against the Detroit Lions. They were in much better form, pretty solid work across the board. That would be the hope.
But the last part there is the key against the Detroit Lions.
No, I know.
You're now substituting the Detroit Lions defensive front with the Philadelphia Eagles defensive front, and that's not going to happen the same way.
But look, what it at least looked like, having Josh Sitton, Cody Whitehair, and Kyle Long on the interior playing up to their capabilities, especially in pass protection. Bobby Massey and Charles Leno at the tackle spots. They're your creep back toward average type of tackles. I mean, that's a solid offensive line that can at least give the Bears some hope. And as you mentioned, the defense has been solid. I think they have that chance to keep the game close. I'm still waiting for the Mitch Trubisky breakout game, so to speak. When does he get a little bit more put on his plate? When does he make a few more key throws? Not just racking up 297 yards against the Packers on a couple big screen passes and stuff like that. It's let him go out and make some throws. And maybe this isn't the week against Philadelphia, but I'm just trying to give a little bit of hope for the Bears. As far as the Eagles, bringing Ronald Darby back in the secondary, I mean, they're getting scarier and scarier every single week because they're now strong. They're strong across the board in all of the right places. So do you see any reason to believe that the Eagles aren't the best team in the NFC as far as the way they're built at this point?
No. I think it's big that they're getting healthier when other people are only likely to lose people to injury. They've done the hard work while they were losing guys that would be a problem for other teams to lose. They're now getting their number one cornerback like midway through the season, and he came in, hit the ground running, had a fantastic game against Dallas. So that could be huge for them. You're talking about they've basically been holding the fort without a number one corner all this time, right, and have been doing a great job. You add that back in. I mean, that's it's like the difference that Marshawn Lattimore makes to New Orleans. They got Marshawn Lattimore this season. It's transformed them. If they lose him, they're in real trouble. The Eagles are getting their Marshawn Lattimore back. He may not be as good as Marshawn Lattimore, but that's kind of the kind of impact that could have. Yeah, I just no. They look like the best team Both sides of the ball are rolling. It's going to be tough to dethrone them.
And when we talk about the Eagles and their defensive line, I always like to mention that they're rolling 7 deep in very productive defensive linemen. And our boy, Derek Barnett, coming off of his best game of his career. Oh, he's always been my boy since he was a freshman, Sam.
Oh, that doesn't sound
in Tennessee.
True.
Since he was a freshman.
You were all about Team Myles Garrett. Derek Barnett was my hobby horse.
Why can't I take both?
No, you have too many people. You have to pick.
Oh, Garrett's still going to have a better career. But Barnett, a Tennessee Vol over here. I got some Vols in the room. We're on location over here, so we got some fist pumps as I talk about Barnett. But coming off his best game, 6 total pressures, 2 sacks, 2 hits, and 2 hurries against the Cowboys. So a defensive line that seemingly continues to get better. The Eagles are getting stronger and stronger as the season unfolds. So we both have the Eagles beating the Bears. Let's roll through quickly. Cleveland Browns at the Cincinnati Bengals. We are both taking the Bengals. DeShone Kizer against Jacksonville last week, had a stretch where it's like, okay, here's a pretty good play. Here's a pretty good play, but also had a stretch of 3 turnover-worthy plays in about 7 plays, bad decisions and late fumbles. And to me, that's the thing I'm looking for if I'm a Browns fan is, signs of life from DeShone Kizer. He had that one game 2 weeks ago that had some positives in there. It was his best game of his career, but struggled again last week. And I'm hoping to see the defense start to get a little bit better. And I think we've seen a little bit of that in recent weeks. What's the hope here for Cleveland going up against the Bengals?
Well, I mean, they need a game where DeShone Kizer as his nature is a boom or bust type of quarterback. It's just that at the moment he's not good enough to be. There's no boom. There's just bust.
Right.
I think he has the capability to have boom side of his play in the NFL. He just hasn't shown too much of it yet. If they're going to win a game, they need one of those games out of him. They need good DeShone Kizer to show up and him to actually be playing well throughout the game. I mean, it's possible that it could happen against the Bengals. I think that Browns defense has actually got itself into a pretty good place and could do a reasonable job against Cincinnati's offense. It just does. Everything on offense requires Kizer to at least have a half-decent game. I think they are capable of doing some damage on the ground, maybe against the Bengals, but they're going to need a quarterback that doesn't actively try and throw the game away the way he did last week.
Yeah, he showed the boom with the one really nice seam route for a touchdown. He showed the bust on quite a few turnover-worthy plays. A couple nice performances last week for the Browns. James Burgess flying around in the run game and Joe Schobert in the middle of the field. Again, if you are a Browns fan, it's looking for young players like that to show off their potential, show that they're a part of the rebuild. Myles Garrett, a couple nice pass rushes, snuck a couple of pressures past your boy Cam Robinson of the Jags and made him look silly a couple times. But I think that's what we're looking at for the Browns is that young defense starting to come together. And one of these days, Kizer will put together a nice game and they will pull off a win. As far as the Bengals, I put the nail in the coffin a couple weeks ago on the Bengals. Maybe it was premature, not because the Bengals are good, but because they beat the Broncos last week, who are also we put the nail in their coffin as well. The Bengals have the Browns this week. They're still not technically out of it because everybody is still in the AFC. So it's way too early. Even the Browns technically are in it. 47 things. Oh, they're eliminated.
Yeah,
one of those 47 things failed.
Yeah, this week, the first 3 games, I don't know which one it was. One of those games dumped the Browns out officially.
Oh, they were so close. Let's officially put the nail in the Browns coffin then.
Yeah. No,
okay,
I think
that's done.
Look, last week was the nail in the coffin bowl between the Bengals and the Broncos. Somebody was going to win that game. They're both still out of it. Okay, the Bengals may get another win this week against the Browns, but then they're going to face the Steelers, and that's probably the end of that. So I think we're still good with this writing off the Cincinnati Bengals thing. It's just they're going to make it look a little bit closer than it was.
All right. As far as something to watch for Cincinnati, defensive tackle Geno Atkins, always a guy to keep an eye on, still playing at a productive high level. I want to see Carl Lawson off the edge too, kind of get back on track to where he's been or where he was early in the season. He's been pretty consistent, but he had some peak games early in the year where he had, a 10 pressure game, some 5 pressure games. He's had a couple of these last couple of weeks, but I want to see him just sustain things down the stretch. And again, looking forward for the Bengals, if they could shore some things up on the offensive line, They've got some nice pieces on the defensive line that have started to, which they haven't had, I guess, in recent years. So if you're a Bengals fan, that's where I'm looking. Just watching those defensive linemen, the young guys like Carl Lawson, seeing how they finish up down the stretch and feeling good about those guys being some building blocks for the future.
Yeah, I think it's a game where both defenses are the strength of the respective teams.
I think that's fair. Offensively, Cincinnati not getting much beyond A.J. Green, so looking for contributions elsewhere. We both take the Bengals in this one. Miami's traveling to New England. Miami has been a pretty disastrous team over the last few weeks. New England trending upward, starting to look like the Patriots team that we had expected early in the year on both sides of the ball. The efficient, high-powered offense, but also a defense that we well actually to this week, Sam, and said, well, actually, they are Super Bowl caliber because, hey, this is similar to last year's defense, aside from maybe a couple guys as far as rushing the passer and run defense goes. But any reason to believe that not so much that Miami has a shot, but what are you looking for here? I think between the Dolphins, the way they're trending, and then the Patriots and them trending more toward that Super Bowl caliber team that we expected.
Yeah, I mean, the Patriots, it's more of the same. They're going to continue to roll on offense. Tom Brady is just playing too well for them to be anything other than really successful there. They're an interesting offense because Brady's playing so fantastically. They're able to get really creative matchups all over the place. They're very difficult to go one-on-one with and actually come out on top. The defense, it's kind of what we said. Can they continue to cut down on the mistakes, or do the cracks start to appear again? What we said on Well Actually was the one thing that really differs from a year ago is their run defense. They don't have those defensive linemen playing really well against the run. Guys like Trey Flowers, Alan Branch in particular was fantastic last year against the run, has not been the same force this year. Can they get those guys back on track? Because at some point they're going to run into a team that can really run the ball well on them. I mean, even if you just project it all the way out to the Super Bowl, and at the moment the two best teams in the NFL are Philadelphia and New England. If they run against Philadelphia's offensive line, they're going to need to figure out how to stop the run, because otherwise
absolutely.
That's the big problem in that game. And then for Miami, I mean, the offense is going to be ugly because Jay Cutler leading it. But on defense, there are some talented players there. I'm curious to see if those guys can continue to play well. If Cameron Wake somehow is just perennially ageless, doesn't ever seem to slow down, always getting pressure. There's some talented players on that side of the ball, and they're running up against a really good unit. So if nothing else, that's an entertaining side of the ball to watch.
The New England offense in recent weeks, I think they've shown the ability to be flexible as far as where they look for matchups. So against Denver, it was, hey, running backs and tight ends, we're going after you guys. We're avoiding the corners. Against Oakland, they were able to attack outside a little bit more because Oakland had some backup corners in there. If this is a dictate the matchup type of game, as it usually is for the New England offense, I think it's going to be that quick passing game again, because they do generally respect what Sue and Wake can do. As bad as Miami's been in recent weeks, those guys are still capable of taking over games, and William Hayes on the defensive line and Charles Harris showing flashes this year as a rookie. So I'd expect the short pass game for New England, trying to get guys like Kiko Alonso and Lawrence Timmons in space, Ray Maluga, all those linebackers who really aren't equipped to stick with the Patriots running backs, tight ends, and slot receivers. So that's what I'm expecting matchup-wise in this one. But I think we both expect a pretty easy win for the Patriots at home against the Dolphins team that, again, like the rest of the AFC East, trending back toward away from average, Sam.
Yeah, in the wrong
creeping
direction.
away from average. And now let's throw it to our guys, Eric Eager and George C., for a little bit more on the Dolphins and Patriots.
12 lock of the week, a post-Turkey Day lock of the week, so please forgive us if we sound stupid. It's the turkey's fault. George Shahuri over here, joined by Eric Eager over there in Wisconsin. How was your Thanksgiving, man?
It was pretty good. The food was good. The football was okay, I guess. The Vikings-Lions game ended up being compelling, although we were on the wrong side at the end of that one. Was really nice to get the under in the night game last night for the first time in a few weeks for those picks.
Yeah, man, that was a tough morning one, because I think we were on the right side of it. They lost by 7 with Matt Stafford having just an abomination of a game. I think that throw to Golden Tate actually still hasn't fallen back down to earth, which means maybe there's a chance Golden Tate can like come back and catch it and we'll cover somehow. I don't know. I'm obviously not bitter at all. But moving on to this week, our lock of the week. I think this is kind of we've talked about this a couple of times. There have been these weeks where just like, this is ugly and smells terrible and we're going to just power through and do the best we can. But this week kind of has that feeling. Nonetheless, I do kind of like our lock of the week this week because it's counter to pretty much everything that every sharp bettor out there will tell you, which is why we're taking the New England Patriots at home in Foxborough, 16-point favorites against the Miami Dolphins. So the number's huge. So as we usually do, Eric, what scares you the most about this one?
Yeah, I think it's just the number, right? I mean, most of the sharp bettors and the the quants will tell you, well, maybe not the quants, but the people who are historically good at sports betting will tell you, when you get that many points, you take the underdog there. But I think when trying to reason through that in this sense, it's actually pretty hard to come up with like real football-y reasons to take the dog here.
Yeah, not to mention that didn't Jarvis Landry say that they were going to sweep the Patriots this year? Wasn't that?
Yeah, and Bill Belichick and Tom Brady do really well with disrespect.
Yeah, man. I mean that the only thing that from a football standpoint that stands out to me is I think something that we've discussed the past couple of weeks, which is a good pass rusher in Cameron Wake, Ndamukong Suh as well. Taking advantage of a little bit of a banged up Patriots offensive line that has not been an issue with Von Miller or Khalil Mack. So, even though that's a slight concern, I think we've probably got Belichick, scheming something up for that. On the flip side of things, though, there's a lot of obviously compelling reasons to think the Patriots just smoke them here. What's number one in your book?
Yeah, I mean, I think, with having, the point we had last week with Brandon Cooks kind of going over the top of the Oakland Raiders defense a couple times. He leads the league in yards gained on 20-yard receptions, or passes of 20 yards in the air or more, and he leads by about 100 yards clear of the next best guy. Oakland's defense was the worst at surrendering deep passes. Miami's second. Miami's defense in and of itself is giving up the 8th most yards per play and 25 points a game. I think there's really a matchup there, not only for New England to do well offensively, but to do well offensively in a way that will cover such a spread, which is to score quickly. I can't see how Brandon Cooks doesn't get behind that defense at least a time or two on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, so you think about this quarterback matchup. I obviously don't need to tell you that Tom Brady is better than Jay Cutler, but looking at some of the taking a little bit of a deeper dive into what makes Cutler bad and what makes Brady great. Brady is just continually making these great throws down the field in particular. 24 big-time throws, leads the NFL. And then you look at Jay Cutler, he's got 2 big-time throws. He is by far the least likely of any quarterback thus far to make that big-time throw, and yet has still made his fair share of turnover-worthy plays. Has the worst ratio of those two things in the NFL. So, if he doesn't make big plays and still makes some turnover-worthy plays that the Patriots can take advantage of, and as you said, score quickly, that's a recipe, I think, for another kind of really lopsided game, which the Patriots have played of late. So 16 points is a lot. Kind of hold your nose here and just let Tom do his thing. Let the pliability work here in this one.
Yeah, he's really going to stretch those muscles, lengthen them. Hopefully he lengthens the margin of victory here sufficiently for us.
I see what you did there. I'm a believer, man. I will not I'm not going to diss the pliability in any way, shape, or form. That's our lock of the week this week. If you want more, of course, you can head to the website. We had a nice little Thanksgiving Day picks, as Eric talked about. We're going to have a nice little Friday picks, as we usually do for this weekend. Get yourself a PFF Elite subscription if you don't already. Get all of the against the spread and over-under picks. I think that's all I've got, Eric. You had one more thing, though, that you wanted to remind our listeners of.
Yeah, so, last week, George and I started a little bookie business on taking bets for the next sponsor of the PFF podcast with, looking at shampoos for Mike Renner. And we had a various, set of, brands, and a lot of money, especially sharp money, has come in on no shampoo for Renner. And unfortunately for us, that was about a 15-1, proposition. And so, our new business is in danger of not being solvent unless Mike washes his hair. And so, last week, I think both of us being, somewhat progressive, we pushed Mike towards the organic shampoo. But at this point, I think we'd like for him just to simply wash his hair with soap.
That would be ideal. I don't care if it's the body wash, really, to be honest. There is compelling evidence that the hair does not get washed. There's maybe a potential that he uses a little bit of maple syrup in the morning. I've heard that.
To keep it up slick?
Exactly. It's been very productive in the past. So that counts, though. That's, maple syrup.
Maple syrup is 1,000-1.
1,000-1. So get your bets in to Eric A. Eager at hotmail.net. That's your email, right?
It's Dr. Eric Alistair Eager at hotmail.net.
Oh, God help me. Or you can hit him up on AOL Instant Messenger. That's his other thing that he uses. So get your bets in. Anything but no shampoo. We're going to make sure that the hair gets washed and that the Patriots cover. We'll talk to you guys next week. Back to you guys.
Lock it up.
You lock it up.
All right, well, let's go another AFC South battle. Tampa Bay Bucks at the Atlanta Falcons. Falcons coming off, a nice win. Monday night at Seattle. Atlanta is that team that all of our rankings, the ELO rankings, continue to say Atlanta's good, guys. Let's not sleep on Atlanta. They're a well-rounded team. And Matt Ryan now throwing the ball as well as any quarterback in the league, especially the last 5 or 6 weeks. He was outstanding Monday night. Had a quick little Twitter argument, Sam, because he only threw for 198 yards or whatever it was. So there's no way that Matt Ryan could have been having a great game. But if you watched every throw that he made, ball location, decision making, he had about 45-yard touchdown negated by a defensive pass interference where he put it right on his receiver's hands. Ryan has been outstanding in recent weeks. If he keeps playing like this is as dangerous of a team as it was last year when they went to the Super Bowl. Am I crazy for thinking that?
No, and that Seattle game felt like exactly what it was a year ago, which was the statement that this team is for real. I mean, that's what it was a season ago. They went to Seattle and they were able to hang with the Seahawks in their stadium, and that was the game that proved that this Atlanta Falcons team a year ago was actually for real, and the record wasn't just a mirage, which was, I think, a lot of people's fear heading into that game. The offense had been amazing. Everyone was waiting for it to come back down to earth, but they were able to go and get it done against Seattle, and that was huge. I think this past week it was the same deal. What was interesting is I think they hit them with the exact same touchdown than they did a year ago, which just breaks Seattle's defensive assignments within a certain coverage, because obviously the coaching staff comes from that Seattle coaching tree, and they just know that there's a certain way that you can deploy a certain personnel package that, given the rules Seattle has in coverage, they literally cannot cover it. It would require...
Nobody can cover the tight end yoink, though, Sam.
Well, this wasn't the tight end yoink, I don't think. I think it was.
I think it was yoink-ish.
No,
they yoinked it.
Different kind of play. But I didn't go to check. I meant to go and check if it was exactly the same play or not. But either way, it looks like they've now been hit twice with a play that they literally cannot defend based on their rules and coverage. That seems like something they might want to get fixed. At least if you're playing that team, that knows that.
Right.
But I think this is a dangerous team. They are good. They still have some weaknesses in some concerning areas that it's going to be interesting to see if the Bucs can exploit that, because the Bucs are that team this year that we said, the AFC South looks like a really strong division, and one of those teams probably isn't going to live up to it because they're going to be the team that loses all these close games to the other teams, and they're going to end up with this bottom-dwelling record. They're actually probably better than that. I think the Bucs have been that team. It's been helped by the fact that Jameis Winston has gone down, and you've had to rely on Fitzmagic at quarterback. But they're certainly talented enough to take a game to Atlanta and exploit some of the areas they're weak in. So I think it's going to be an interesting game, but I'm still going with the Falcons.
Yeah, and Fitz has played all right these last few weeks. He is very much like Josh McCown, the guy that can make enough throws to make you competitive, and then it's just a matter of does he run out of time before he makes the disastrous throw? That's how I kind of view the game. Like if Fitz only has to throw the ball 35 times and he doesn't make that disastrous decision, you're just thankful he didn't have to throw it 50 times because it was in there somewhere, If you can get through the game without it. And that's how I think Fitz's teams win. When they win, that's what happens. Or like 2015 with the Jets, he just kind of got away with those disastrous plays. He just had his interception luck. So, I think Tampa Bay does have a chance to make it competitive, but Atlanta's pass rush, last year they had Vic Beasley, the sack leader, and now this year they're better. They've got 6 or 7 guys that can get after the quarterback, including the great Adrian Claiborne, Sam, the dominant Adrian Claiborne.
Yeah, 6 sacks in a game. That's Hall of Fame stuff right there.
That's domination. So yeah, the Atlanta team is much more well-rounded, and we're both taking the Falcons in this one.
Here's where we differ, though.
This is where we differ. Okay, we both you differ from everybody at PFF. You're the only person taking the Indianapolis Colts at home against the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans, who one week look like a nice AFC competitor, and the next week look like the worst team in the AFC. They were much closer to the worst team in the AFC when they got demoralized by the Pittsburgh Steelers on Thursday Night Football last week. Tell me why you are taking the Colts. Are you just recency bias going off that beatdown that Tennessee took?
Well, look, Tennessee got their ass kicked by Pittsburgh. The Colts ran Pittsburgh really close. It might not go too far beyond that, but
transitive property property plus there, Sam.
I haven't been able to work out this Tennessee team. Every time I think they're okay, they end up playing a terrible game, looking atrocious. The Colts, I do think, are actually not a terrible team. Jacoby Brissett remains intriguing. Capable of big plays. Their problem is that the offensive line is still a major problem most of the way across the board. There's some bad players still playing on that offensive line, which is going to be a problem. And they've lost some guys on defense, but I think the defense has been playing better recently. And this Tennessee team just hasn't taken it to teams every time you expect them to. So, yeah, I think that the Colts may actually be able to spring a surprise and take this one.
Yeah, I don't think it's crazy. For me, thinking about the game, it wasn't like it was a slam dunk. And if you look at Tennessee, again, week to week, they beat the Browns 12-9 a few weeks back. But they also beat Seattle when Seattle was loaded with all of their players, when Richard Sherman was healthy and Earl Thomas was there. Beat them 33-27. They beat Jacksonville 37-16. So this entire season has been quite the roller coaster ride for the Titans. I do expect them to get back toward the peak on the roller coaster. The number Zach Robinson keeps pulling out on the QB podcast is for Marcus Mariota, his play action numbers versus non-play action. And again, play action numbers generally trend a little bit better. It opens up the defense, gives you a better shot, versus no play action is a little bit more challenging. And those are the situations where it's must pass. And your best quarterbacks usually step up there. But Mariota has the biggest passer rating differential with play action. He's at 134.4. That's best in the NFL. No play action at 62.9, and that is second worst in the NFL. So just a drastic difference. So I think that number might even sum up the inconsistency of the Titans week to week. When they're able to work off play action and keep the game flow the way they want it, Mariota can have some success. When they have to get into must-pass situations and the game's getting out of hand, hasn't been great. So I think that's the key there, is keeping getting that run game, getting that exotic smash mouth that they like to run, working behind that, working play action off of it, and keeping the game close. And I think Tennessee's got a good shot if that's the case.
Yeah, it's really a case of whether the Colts can hold up against that Tennessee run game, because the games they've won and won comfortably this year, it's when they've been able to just demoralize and overpower a team with that smash mouth game. And if they can't do that, then they have some problems. But I don't know whether the Colts are good enough to be able to prevent them doing that.
Keep an eye on second-year Titans safety Kevin Byard, one of the best safeties in the league this entire season. 5 interceptions. They all came in a 2-game period, but also 6 pass breakups. And we'll see if he can snag 1 or 2 from Jacoby Brissett to turn the game. And that's what I'm banking on, because I picked the Titans, but you picked the Colts.
Lone wolf in it with the Colts.
Well, good luck. You do need to get back in the picks race and try to catch up to me. Game of the week, Sam. You and I on the analysis, because we get those 4 o'clock games of the week assigned to us. That's what we do. New Orleans Saints traveling to the Los Angeles Rams. The Saints continue to roll, even though they did it in dramatic fashion against the Washington Redskins last week, making a miraculous comeback, pulling it off in overtime. The Rams lost a game at Minnesota. Both teams 7-2 going in. Now Minnesota is up to 9-2 after their Thanksgiving win. The Rams are still up one game in the NFC West against the Seattle Seahawks, who are 6-4. And every week I keep thinking, well, the Rams are going to lose the West at some point, but we're running out of time for Seattle to make their comeback. Is this a statement game for the Rams? Can they win at home against the Saints, who haven't lost since week 2?
Well, I think more importantly, the Seahawks are running out of players, which
true.
May pose a bigger problem for them. I do think they're going to get closer this week, though, because last week the Rams losing to the Vikings, it wasn't just that they lost, it was how it happened, in that they got basically shut down for that entire game. They scored in the opening drive, and then they didn't score again for the rest of that game, and they couldn't really stop the Vikings offense, which I don't think is as good as the Saints offense. So I think that they're going to struggle against better teams. The Rams are a good team. They're dramatically better than they were a year ago, and they're probably better than most people gave them credit for, but I don't think they're a really good team. And I think when they go up against really good teams in the NFC, they're going to come out on the losing end of those encounters. So last week, we saw one of them against Minnesota. I think we're going to see the same thing against New Orleans. That Saints defense is good enough to limit what had been the highest scoring offense in the league in the Rams. And on the other side of the ball, that Saints offense, I think, is a better unit than the Vikings offense, and the Vikings offense didn't really have problems moving the ball in the Rams. So, yeah, I think that the Saints are just a better team.
Yeah, I'm with you on this. Obviously, we both picked the Saints here, but when you look at the Rams through the year, that offense has taken great strides forward, no doubt about it. But they struggled last week against Minnesota, as you said. They struggled against Jacksonville offensively, even though they scored 27. They had special teams help and all that fun stuff. They struggled against Seattle at home, again, the fully equipped Seattle. So when they've had to go up against better defenses, it's not like Goff is just throwing the ball all over the yard and Gurley's running like crazy over these teams. So I'd expect this to be a tough one for the Rams offense. And yeah, the Saints, the thing I will continue to come back to is they find ways to win in different ways every week, right? They're capable of winning with the run game, with the defense. And then Drew Brees reminded us that, hey, he's willing to go or capable of still going and winning games down the stretch as well. One interesting stat to come out of this as far as point differential goes, Saints have scored 302. The Rams have scored 303, so 1 point difference there. Saints have given up 196, and the Rams have given up 186. So pretty close as far as point differential goes, but we're both taking the Saints on the road here. Let's go another 4 o'clock game, Seattle at San Francisco. San Francisco coming off their first win a couple weeks ago against the New York Giants. Give me something to watch in this one, Sam. It's starting to become must-win territory for the Seahawks in this loaded NFC.
It is, and they're losing these players that we kept talking about. They're down everybody in the secondary. I didn't even realize that they had re-signed Byron Maxwell until I saw him out there in coverage for them during last week's game. So the Seahawks are basically without the entire Legion of Boom, which was always one of the biggest reasons they were winning games. It's now basically the defensive front, which hasn't been as good as it has been in the past, and the linebacker duo, really, of Bobby Wagner and KJ Wright. And in particular, Wagner has been playing out of his skin this year. But he now has to make up for everything going on behind him. Bobby Wagner is the one guy in coverage that they have playing really well. So I think they're probably okay this week because it's the 49ers. But they're in real trouble in terms of catching the Rams at the top of the division because they're getting so thin on the back end.
Don't forget the first matchup. Seattle snuck it out 12-9. At home. Russell Wilson played one of his worst games of the year, even though he made the beautiful game-winning touchdown pass. 4 or 5 turnover-worthy plays that he didn't actually throw an interception. So at some point, if he plays like that again, San Francisco needs to capitalize. Wilson, third most turnover-worthy plays in the NFL. It did come back to bite them against Atlanta on Monday night. So it's getting into must-win territory for Seattle, but we both like the Seahawks because they still are a better all-around team than the Niners, but it's maybe not as lopsided as we think because division games can be tight sometimes. And again, it was only 12-9 back in week 2.
And all
Another
of the
division.
all of the 7-3 techniques that the 49ers have are all going to go off against that Seahawks offensive line.
Yes. How many 3 techniques can you use to beat up on the Seahawks guards? That's the strategy in San Francisco. Another division battle, AFC West, Denver Broncos, losers of 6 straight, going to Oakland to take on the Raiders, coming off a very disappointing effort against the New England Patriots.
This is the Disappointment Bowl.
Ooh. So Denver was in the Nail in the Coffin Bowl last week, and now the Disappointment Bowl against the Raiders. Who is less disappointing, Sam, the Raiders or the Broncos?
They're both depressing, aren't they? I mean, I guess we kind of picked the Broncos to have something of a down year this season, so
we did.
They aren't really disappointing compared with what we thought they would be at the start of the year, but given how they actually began the season, they've just driven off a cliff. I think this is going to be Paxton Lynch, though, isn't it? We're going to get to see whether Paxton Lynch can be any better than Brock Osweiler and Trevor Siemian, and if he isn't, then presumably he gets taken out behind the woodshed in Denver at the end of the season and blown away. Right. Because that is really not a high bar to be clearing. Anything better than the worst quarterback play in the NFL probably takes that. I think that's the reason to watch this game, honestly, is you're going up against the Raiders that are not a good defense. They're going to have one star player to try and shut down, obviously, in Khalil Mack. And then we have to see if a year and a half sitting on the sidelines, there's anything there in Paxton Lynch. Because this is the future of that Denver franchise.
This could be the how much money do you throw at Kirk Cousins game for the Denver Broncos. This really could be, because the Raiders defense, last week they were kind of depleted. They put Obi Melifonwu at corner. He's a rookie who played safety in college, and I know some teams liked him at corner coming out, but he was playing straight left corner against the Patriots, only lasted 26 snaps, and it was ugly. He got torched by Brandon Cooks for a 64-yard touchdown where he looked a little lost. And the point is that this Oakland defense, they have been torched through the air, just absolutely torched, allowing a passer rating of something like 114 this year to everyone. So if there's a game, even though it's the first start of the season for Paxton Lynch, if there's a game for him to look good, it would be this one. And honestly, I think Denver, there's rumors about them wanting to give up on all these quarterbacks and just go all in on whoever the next guy is out there, whether it's Kirk Cousins or Alex Smith or Teddy Bridgewater, whoever it may be this offseason. And the way Lynch plays down the stretch is going to go a long way toward determining where they go this offseason. So, yeah, that's what I'll be keeping my eyes glued to the TV to watch Paxton Lynch and his development here against this Raiders defense.
The Raiders still don't have an interception on defense, I think.
That's tough to do.
Kevin Byard has 6 on his own. The Raiders as a team don't have an interception yet. That's insane.
It's really tough to do. And again, on paper, it just seemed like they were starting to get some pieces there. I know Garyon Conley, their rookie first rounder, has barely seen the field. Melifonwu, again, who I mentioned, he's only played 33 snaps all year. So they still have this young talent to maybe mold, but it's been an ugly season on the back end for the Raiders. But we're still taking them, Sam. We're still taking them.
We've both got Oakland, I think, which probably tells you all you need to know about our confidence in the Paxton Lynch experiment.
Yes. Oakland's offense still should have enough firepower between the offensive line, Marshawn Lynch, and Derek Carr and his just maddening inconsistency. But we're taking the Raiders in this one because they're still looking a little bit better than Denver has in recent weeks.
Yep.
Jacksonville Jaguars head to Arizona to take on the Cardinals in the Blaine Gabbert Revenge Bowl, Sam.
Oh, no.
This is where we are here. Blaine Gabbert starting against his former team, who now has maybe the best defense in the entire NFL, though Jalen Ramsey coming down with a hand injury. Not sure if he's going to play. Might soften them a little bit. Also might help the argument when Mike Renner said, draft Marshawn Lattimore at number 4 overall. You can never have too many corners because you never know when Jalen Ramsey gets hurt and you just plug Marshawn Lattimore in there, guys.
Yeah. Alternatively, you might not have been playing Marshawn Lattimore all season.
No. It's always better to have loaded corners than it is to have a running back.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't like the idea of drafting a kind of big bruising power back as that high anyway, so I'm fine with the idea of not taking Fournette to get something better, but just not sure I'd have gone with Lattimore either. Either way,
always take Lattimore. Okay. Anyway, go ahead. What's going to happen here in the Blaine Gabbert Revenge Bowl, Sam?
Well, Blaine Gabbert's going to play badly. I think that's the one thing we can be sure of, because he is, after all, Blaine Gabbert. Revenge or otherwise, I don't know that makes a difference to his play. We're going to see him put the ball in harm's way against a very good defense. He's going to be under pressure virtually all game against a very good defense, and that's probably all she wrote. Then you just have to look on the offensive side of the ball for the Jags and see if they can get anything done with their offense at all, because they are still leaning on the shoulders of Blake Bortles, who, I mean, he's had games this season where he's been okay, but they haven't come for a while now, and they could easily have lost this past week against Cleveland if it wasn't for the fact that the Browns had a more potent version of Blake Bortles in terms of Deshaun Kaiser throwing the ball away. So, yeah, I mean, I think, oh God, it's just depressing, isn't it? The Jags at least have one.
You're not selling the game for me, Sam.
I'm not selling it for me either. The Browns or the Jags at least have one elite unit, and that should take it in this game that doesn't have many of those.
I'll give you something to watch. Okay. Budda Baker, last week, his first start, 70 snaps, played all 70. A dominant outing. When he was drafted, he got these Tyrann Mathieu comps as a guy that could play the slot corner / free safety role. And those best slot corners over the years, your Antoine Winfield prototypes, are the guys that can like play linebacker, play the run essentially like they're a linebacker, rush the passer efficiently, and also cover slot receivers. We had an outstanding game against the run by Budda, finished with 10 tackles, 3 stops in the run game, finished with a sack and a hit as a pass rusher, finished with a strong grade in coverage, batted pass as a pass rusher. He had one of those unbelievable all-around games for which he was drafted. So that was fun to watch. So there's something to watch on the Cardinals defense, all of their versatile players. Tyrann Mathieu was on the field with him at the same time, seeing the way that they use those guys together. I know that they lost and they gave up to 31 to the Houston Texans, but I'm giving you some players to keep an eye out for in the future. We're both taking Jacksonville here, so yep. We do think that Jags defense is going to be too much, but I think you have those intriguing young pieces on the Arizona defense to keep an eye on.
All right, I'll buy that.
Fired up now? You fired up now?
No, it's still going to be a miserable game, but there's something to watch.
Let's go to Sunday Night Football. Green Bay Packers taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers. I had Zach break down Brett Hundley and his game the other day on the QB Analysis podcast, and I made him recite the note that he gave me during the game where Brett Hundley struggles both before snap. He's like, before the snap, you can't read it, and after the snap, he's not reading it. That's a bad combination. So that's essentially what we saw last week as they got shut out by the Baltimore Ravens. Pittsburgh, their offense finally broke through. Dominant performance against the Tennessee Titans. Roethlisberger throws for 4 touchdowns. Probably the cleanest game he's played of the entire year. Antonio Brown just absolutely dominant on the outside. Is this the Steelers team we're expecting to see now over these next few weeks? The team we've been waiting for all season, who, they have a good defense. They have a defense that can keep them in every game. But by the way, it's the offense that really should be winning games every single week because they're one of the league's best.
Yeah, that's the big question. We were expecting this team to have arguably maybe the league's best or the best offense in the league going into the season, and they've been sputtering along. Only one component was ever functioning at a time. Last week they put it all together and they looked like that team. So if they can get that again, this suddenly becomes a Super Bowl contender as opposed to just a team that's probably going to make the playoffs and then lose to the Patriots. If they do find that in them, they have the ability to beat the Patriots and anybody else in the AFC. So that's fascinating. The Green Bay side of things, they're a really interesting team because they are just trying to stay in the hunt until Aaron Rodgers is back.
Running out of time here.
Yes, but they're not out of it. I mean, they're only a game back from Detroit in that division. I mean, the division itself, I think, is gone with the Vikings at 9-2. In fact, it's definitely gone for the Packers. But the division's probably gone. But they're in the wild card hunt. They're a game back from Detroit at second there. They're 2 games back from Carolina. I mean, that they need to win essentially because otherwise they're falling 3 games back from the Panthers. If the Panthers win, that's a real problem. But I tell you the analogy that I came up with Hundley. I didn't even come up with it just then when you were saying it. Taylor had the thing about Dontrell Inman a while ago, where he is essentially a wide receiver that if you create a player in Madden and change none of the ratings, that's Dontrell Inman.
Yes.
So Brett Hundley is one of those guys, if all you fill in is the physical traits,
So you fill in, you make this physical marvel.
Yes. And then
with the awareness
you
and
just
all
haven't
of the
changed
other.
the mental traits, the attributes. None of the mental attributes have been changed from 60, from default.
Oh
So
man,
that's Brett Hundley. And I don't
yeah.
know if that's good enough to win them games. And they desperately just they probably need one more win until Aaron Rodgers comes back and potentially tries to rescue them. But
I don't know. We're here in week 15. That's 2 weeks away, and there's just between the Seahawks at 6-4, the Panthers at 7-3, the Falcons at 6-4. There's just too much wild card competition, in my opinion. It is must-win situation now for the Packers, and going to Pittsburgh on Sunday night, I'm just not seeing it.
I mean, I'm always of the opinion that with Brett Hundley as your quarterback, I'm just not seeing it. He's definitely capable of those games.
Ouch.
We saw a very good game from him, 2 weeks ago? Because if he does luck into the idea that where I want to throw the ball happens to be the right place to throw the ball right now, he can make some spectacular plays, and that's the physical attribute stuff. He has
Right.
the arm talent, the accuracy, the arm strength. He can make some fantastic plays, but you need to get lucky for the entire game for him not to basically misread something badly.
Just for perspective, Deshaun Watson's a guy that Zach was critical of as far as not being great post-snap,
Yeah.
but being excellent pre-snap. And if you're just good pre-snap, there's a lot that you can do to have success with. But when you struggle with both, you do have games like last week where you can hardly complete a pass and you're throwing disastrous interceptions. That's the
Especially,
big issue.
you can scheme to overcome somebody that's bad in one area.
Exactly. If you know he's going to make the right pre-snap
Exactly.
read, you can put him in position to succeed.
Yeah, you can simplify the reads, and you can basically make it sure that the pre-snap read is going to be the right place to go with the ball almost all the time. If you've got a guy that's bad at both of them, you're literally just hoping that you get lucky.
All right, so we're both taking the Steelers here, and let's see if Hundley can develop at all. This is a key key couple games for Hundley because it's we need to see signs of progress at some point from him, and I want to see if Pittsburgh's offense is for real. If they continue to look like that explosive unit that we expected, very dangerous down the stretch. Monday Night Football, give me a reason to watch the Houston Texans at the Baltimore Ravens, Sam.
To try and figure out what the hell the Ravens are again. They're one of the 2 or 3 teams that I've not been able to get a handle on all the way through this season. They've pitched 3 shutouts, I think, this year, and
Correct.
I still don't know if they're any good. They just happen to have run up against a Brett Hundley-led team, a Jay Cutler-led team. Was Jay Cutler
An uninspired Jay Cutler-led team in London.
A Cincinnati Bengals team in Week 1 where they hadn't yet realized that their offensive line was one of the worst in the league and were trying to run a long-developing offense with it. So
Right.
I just don't know what this team is. It's got some cornerbacks that are playing fantastically. Jimmy Smith he's finally realizing his ridiculous athletic potential. Like, he has the physical traits to be the best cornerback in the NFL. And he threatened it once before a few years ago, and now we're starting to see it. Like, Jimmy Smith is absolutely for real this year and is playing like one of the best corners in the league. All of their corners are playing pretty well, and that defensive front has been playing better. So I think for them, it's the defensive side of the ball that's the interesting thing to watch and just see if they can do that again. And then the Texans, so they're in a horrible situation because they have maybe the worst offensive line in the NFL. And they were able to completely hide that with Deshaun Watson and all the stuff they were doing. And as soon as you put Tom Savage back there, it looks horrendous again. But we all kind of just go, Tom Savage is terrible. But it's worth kind of pointing out just how terrible that offensive line is and how hard that makes his job. Like, he's not good and is not playing well, but he has maybe the hardest situation in the entire league because of that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And again, with this Baltimore defense that has proved opportunistic against teams that are overmatched offensively, right, that have weaknesses, it could be ugly. Baltimore has a shot right now to go to 6-5 and essentially control their own destiny in the AFC wildcard picture, which, of course, includes teams like the Buffalo Bills and the red-hot Los Angeles Chargers, and everybody in the AFC is technically in it. But the Ravens are actually putting themselves, except for the Browns. Browns are officially eliminated. We've nailed the coffin. But the Ravens do have a shot to control their own destiny and be one of the many AFC teams very much in this playoff picture. Even though we don't I mean, they have one of the worst offenses in the league.
Yeah.
But they, I expect that defense to have their way against Houston.
Nuke Hopkins versus Jimmy Smith could be one of the matchups of the weekend, and the one-on-one matchups. That could be an absolute stormer.
And that's why we're here, giving you guys reasons to watch the game. We're both taking Baltimore.
Yep.
All right. We're both taking the Ravens. We only differ on one, so I'm expecting us both to go something like, well, I'll go undefeated. You'll pick your one loss on Sunday.
I need that game to get back, given the game I dropped yesterday.
Yes, you do. You're 7 games behind me now, Sam.
I know.
That's rough.
I'm having to pick the underdogs to try and claw myself back into this, which is only digging me into a deeper hole.
Yeah, be strategic with your picks over these next few weeks so you can regain some credibility on pickwatch.com. All right, guys, that'll do it for us today. Glad to hear that Sam enjoyed his first ever Thanksgiving. We hope you enjoyed our show and our preview for Week 12. Don't forget to listen to our boys George and Eric. They had your lock of the week earlier in the show today. Be sure to get to profootballfocus.com for even more great picks because those guys are crushing it against the spread. And while you're there, check out Edge and Elite. Don't forget, Elite is available monthly, and you can use the promo code PFF10. You get $10 off any of those products, whether it's Edge, Elite, or Elite Monthly. And Sam and I will be back Monday morning from the podcast of Nook. Sam, I can't wait to get back to our home. Back in the closet for the Week 12 review. Thanks again for listening. Enjoy the weekend of football.